Right. So what was you went to Singapore, right? What happened? How was it?
Yeah, yeah. I went to Singapore. I went with my girlfriend and her family.
Oh,
Yeah, not much. I mean, just there for a conference. Went around a little bit.
you
Weather
go to
was okay.
have you gone to the I heard they have a nice Terminal 4. Have you been to the Terminal 4 of the airport?
Yeah, yeah. So they call that the Jewel. I didn't go this time, but last time, about a year ago, I went. It's
How
very
is it?
beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Very modern. It still kind of blends like built space with nature and right by the airport, so it's quite convenient. So, normally when you go to Singapore, you want to arrive at the airport a little bit before your flight, so you have time to visit the Jewel. It's definitely like part of the highlight of visiting Singapore.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Oh, nice, nice.
Have you been to
Well,
Singapore, Saffron?
yeah, I've been to. Yeah, I've been once, not too much. But that time they weren't. It was like 10 years ago, almost 2015. Yeah, it's 10 years ago I went.
10
So
years ago. Time flies, doesn't it?
yeah, man. And then that's the time they were building it, so they haven't finished it yet. So they opened up in
So you got to go
19.
back.
I gotta go back. Yeah, I got some bucket list to go. So, anyways, so let's see. So yeah, it's a nice place to go. It's not bad.
Yeah, you go for 2, 3 days is enough. It's very easy to get around Singapore. Very good transportation system. Very modern. Very convenient. Very easy to get around.
Very easy. Yeah. Okay. So hi guys.
And you wanna write it down? Would it kill you just to listen? And you wanna sell it out with the words that are possession. As they say, the brain of John and Christian.
Welcome back to Every Degree Matters. This is your host Saffran Minhar, and I got my co-host with me, Chris. And you guys must be wondering why didn't we have last week episode released? Because we took a little bit of off, so we had a lot of things going on between me and in my life and Chris's life. So we thought to have a break. So we are back. And Chris, what's happening? So what do we got today?
Yeah, over the last few weeks, I'm sure you all know there's been talks between Putin and Trump, Zelensky and Trump regarding the situation of the war in Ukraine. Quite a lot is happening there, developing, shall I say. I thought we could talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's obviously been super important over the last few years. It's had, widespread impacts across the world. Has many fundamental, questions regarding the role of the United States, the power balance in Europe, the place for these kind of antiquated wars in modern society. Many questions coming up, and a long, prolonged, dragged out conflict with consequences for millions of people that we all kind of want to see ending. And we're kind of seeing, some steps being taken towards potentially, hopefully, ending this miserable conflict that's occurring between Ukraine and Russia. So I thought maybe we can dive a little bit into that and ask, start some questions to you, Saffron, maybe about some of the background, your perspectives on the background leading up to this conflict, and kind of, yeah, dive into this very important topic.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I mean, that's an interesting thing that's mm, coming out of DC last week, and then Trump meeting in Alaska. The best part was, I don't know if you saw it, when Putin was walking, he flew the B-2 over him, and then Putin just saw that and it's like, what the hell is just happening? So he got really scared. It's just showing my power move. I really like it when Trump does that. Now, you're in American soil, and you know why they chose Alaska, right? Because
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you about that. So, like, what do you think about the choice of location?
it was owned by Russia, so the Russians
Right,
have more control over there. So they know the area, they know the land. Plus, they also have the Christian Orthodox Church and everything. So they are like they are more comfortable. And it was also a half
right.
point for both the leaders to come across and to fly across from wherever the capital is. And I think it's also safe for them because I'm pretty sure KGB people, or they also have people on ground, they know what's happening because they owned it. Nothing has changed more or less in Alaska. Plus, they had it on a joint base, so that was also much more convenient.
Yeah,
You know
I thought
what's the
that was
meaning
really
of a
smart.
joint base, right?
No, not necessarily.
So a joint base is when the U.S. two division of U.S. defense get together and have a base. So let's say the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy has a base, so then that's a joint base. Or let's say if U.S.
All right, right,
What do you call Air Force and the Army has a base, so it's called a joint
right.
base. So whenever they have a joint base, but they have a joint combination of two groups of defense forces, then you call it as a joint base.
Right. Yeah, and I thought that was just, a great decision in terms of the location. Not speaking about the meeting itself, but just the location, right? Because obviously, if Trump goes to Russia, that's perceived as weak, and they're going to say, the president shouldn't degrade himself and go to Russia. But then if Putin comes to, Washington, D.C., they'll say, oh, well, you can't host this war criminal in D.C. So it's like really made sense to put it in Alaska, right? The midway point where Putin still comes to the United States, but it averts some of the criticism. There's the joint history between, Russia and the United States, ownership over Alaska. It really made a lot of sense. And I thought that was actually quite smart.
Yeah, it was a very smart move by Trump. And I think Trump might go to Moscow if he wants to sign the peace agreement, in my understanding. And also the one of the things that we have to understand, why did this war start? Why did Putin they call military aggression to Ukraine? Why did all this happen, man? Let's dive into it. I hope we can dive into it. So
Right. So, I mean, as everyone knows, right, the Russian invasion of Ukraine that really kickstarted you know, the the main, you know, part of this conflict was in 2022. But there was, of course, like a whole buildup beginning with the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014. And
yeah,
even before that, of course, a lot of buildup. So, and I think it kind of follows generally people say, on the Russian side, the concern was they had their own security concerns regarding expansion of NATO, regarding their loss of influence in their former, USSR territories, and what the Russians perceived as, a lack of respect towards them from the United States and the Western community. So I don't know, Saffron, like what do you think in terms of the significance of that feeding into the inevitable invasion in 2022 and the actions, starting in 2014 prior to that?
that's a great starting point. I think we should go back to 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, right? So when the Soviet Union collapsed, at that time, the NATO Secretary General and everyone promised that NATO will not move an inch from where they are. That was the promise made to Russia and all the allies, and they said, okay, because if you know that back in the days when they had during the US, what do you call, the Cold War period of time, they had NATO, then they also had Warsaw Pact. So that was the equivalent force for NATO with USSR and whole of their groupings together. And because of that, when the USSR collapsed, they couldn't survive. The Warsaw Pact couldn't survive, and the Warsaw Pact collapsed. But NATO started expanding further to east and east and east, and then from the beginning, Russia always had a red line, that was Ukraine. Ukraine was the biggest red line. For example, how would America react if China gets together with Mexico for a military partnership and then China puts its troops on Mexican border between the United States? They'll be like, no, 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 you're not doing that. So that's how Russians felt like when they had Ukrainians trying to join NATO. And that was the beginning of the whole point. And if you go back in the recent history, in 2014, uh, CIA and not CIA and the Obama administration funded a coup to ripple a democratic elected president in Ukraine. And then he got through out, and then they elected another puppet, which then led to capturing of Crimea, where it started. And always Putin was like, "Don't ever join NATO. That's the red line." which he has been giving to the West, basically.
Right. And I think these revolutions you're referring to are part of a series of what is called color revolutions. So revolutions that Russia had claimed was backed by the United States and its former Soviet territories in its sphere of influence. So Russians regarded that very much as American kind of encroachment upon, their sphere of influence. And yeah, I mean, personally, I think, there are valid, like the example you made, right, with China and Mexico. I think
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Thinking from an American perspective, right? How would you feel about that? Or Canada, for example, as well. Like if Russia had a military partnership with Canada, and all of a sudden they're stationing troops, they have a security apparatus, security structure, built there with Canada. So like obviously, how would we feel about that, right? And I think there has been a fundamental lack of respect from the West in terms of Russia's valid concerns. And also, mentioned, right, there was not supposed to be a spread of NATO. So I think there has been that fundamental lack of respect from the West towards the Russians' valid security concerns. And of course, the United States has been, active, right, in, democratic, transitions in former Soviet republics. I think that can't be denied. For better or for worse, I mean, you can have your own opinions about that. But again, coming from the Russian perspective, from an authoritarian government, that's obviously very threatening. And going back to that kind of authoritarian style of government in Russia, I mean, how much do you think that plays into this as well? So I also kind of see this as a lot of authoritarian governments, right? They tend to have ideologies, at least, that can kind of back their claim to power. In the case of Russia, it's been famously called, an oligarchy. So people like to point to Putin's appeal to nationalism as a way to legitimize his power and to rally support around him. And taking their valid, concerns, security concerns aside, how much do you think like nationalism played a role in this? Like Putin needs to take control over Ukraine as part of like a nationalist ideology, right? So I think like the Russians fundamentally regard Ukraine from a nationalist perspective as a part of Russia. And also going back with the historical and cultural ties and roots between them, between Ukraine and Russia, having that shared sort of origin in history. How much do you think this is also just like a political move purely on Putin's part?
I think, in my understanding and experience, first of all, we need to go back and see, like the right point you brought in. Why did Putin get into this, madness of, capturing this country, right? First, we have to go back to again to NATO. Putin wanted to join NATO. Do you know that? He wanting to. They just ignored him during Clinton's time. Putin wanted to be part of NATO. They thought that, oh, if he joins NATO, he will be so-called controlling with America. So they didn't want that power struggle. The United States didn't want the power struggle, so they just ignored him. If they he wanted to, Russia wanted to be part of West. Period. They never wanted to be part of the communism with China, with the whole that whole thing. No, Russia always considered itself as West. What we did was we drew this line and saying, no, no, we don't want you, looking them, telling them as the bad guys. And in terms of how Putin, yes, it might also be right, because there are always political agendas for leaders, right? If you look at right now in America, it's also run by oligarchy. Who knows, like, who is funding them, who is giving them money, like, Elon Musk, Miriam Wilson, like for Trump, like Kamala Harris got from Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg. So they are everything. So here we don't admit it's ruled by oligarchy, but indirectly it is. But in Russia, they say it's been ruled by oligarchy because they don't care. They just admit it. I mean, that's how it's run. The rich runs the country. Here, we say the rich doesn't run it, but rich technically runs it. So it's just how the American people has been fooled the past so many years, of how, if you look at the what do you call, the Rothschilds, the Rockefeller, if you look at the Soros, like, how do they get the money? Like, we can go back and forth, right? So it's always easy to point the finger on the other side. and not pretend that we don't have the same problem.
Yeah.
And you're right, there is nationalism growing in America too right now. What do you mean? There's also nationalism with Trump. The whole mega movement was all about nationalism. It was never about international, right? So you can't say every president or every leader can be an authoritarian leader or democratically elected leader can have the same tendency. In my understanding, it's just the different names, but core of their existence always overlap, and it's the same thing. If you look at Russia, Putin always wanted to have control. He didn't want to capture anything. He just wanted to make sure they are all their allies. That's it. You can always do a free trade agreement, like partnership, build relationship. And I don't for a moment understand why Ukraine wanted to join the European Union, why they wanted to join NATO. These are big questions. They think that Russia could be threatening. One half of the Ukrainians speak Russian. Like, why would you go against Russia? You just rather partner with them and do a lot of things.
Right. Well, I mean, I think you could argue that the current conflict is evidence of why they probably wanted to join NATO, right?
I don't think so. It's just that this is my understanding. Me being traveling to Europe and going around and seeing everything. The Eastern Europeans have this mentality that they wanted to join the Western part of Europe, right? Because they think Europe is wow and fancy and nice, and you get the free movement. You get to do a lot of things. So they want that. They don't want to stay in Ukraine. The reason why the people Ukrainian people or like Eastern European people wanted to join EU back in the days, the fundamental reason was free movement, getting into euro currency. Then you get a strong what do you call economy. You always backed by Germany and France and Italy. Before that, UK was also part of it. So you always backed, and they had this saves on, and they are all about having fun and going around. That's how they are life. That's how the life is in Ukraine, for example, if you take. So, and then, for example, I've been meeting a lot of Polish friends, and they've been telling me because of the war in Ukraine, Poland has really grown. There are so many rich people in Poland, Ukrainians. I meet a lot of Ukrainians in America here. They're so rich. I don't know where they got the money, but they're rich. So their whole idea of nationalism, I don't think as much as they say they are so patriotic. I don't know if anyone would go back to their country once the war is over and live there. I don't think nobody's going to go back and live in Ukraine. So I think Ukraine should be like Switzerland, be a neutral country. And I don't know if you know this, that Ukraine produces 30% of the wheat production, of the global wheat production. So if you have a control over 30% of wheat production, you basically control 30% of the world. They all need rice, flour, whatever you name it. Wheat, you need it for beer to make it. So you need wheat for every process of life. So I think they should have just been a neutral country like Switzerland and just be a partner with EU, be a partner with Russia, have a process, have a free trade agreement between both, and build your country. Do not be dependent on the West or Russia. Be independent. And they could be independent because during part of when Russia just want to make sure that they don't go around and mess around and build partnership with other countries. Rather than you can sit down and be part, it's all about economy, right? You build a relationship, everybody's happy. You get a deal with EU, deal like Trump says.
Right.
President Trump says.
So, I mean, that all sounds well and good, right, to be a neutral country, but I would argue it was probably practically not possible for them given the fact they were between, Russia and the West, so to speak. I know you've mentioned maybe we shouldn't be drawing this line between Russia and the West. I always found it a bit odd, right, how, there's Eurocentric West, and then there's Russia, and then there's the East, and Russia never really found its place on the international stage between West and East, and that kind of probably factors into some of this. But yeah, I mean, going back to this idea of Ukraine being a neutral space, I don't know if that would have practically ever worked out, given just the power plays there. But it is an interesting idea for sure, and I'd like to point to Thailand, for example. So Thailand was always kind of a neutral space between the French and the British empires. So the majority of Southeast Asia was controlled for a long time by European countries, mainly France, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands and Indonesia. And Thailand was an independent kingdom between them, between the French and the British empires. And as a consequence, Thailand was never fully dragged into like the Cold War, for example, with the Indo-Chinese War, the Vietnam War. It was also not, fully dragged into World War II. So it's in a sense it's benefited from being a neutral country, and it's done very well for itself, Thailand, economically and asserting its independence. And yeah, so I think that is kind of an interesting idea. What could Ukraine have been if it was a neutral space? And as you said, controls all this wheat production, incredibly important country, right? Not just wheat, I mean also fertilizers. And we all saw, what happened in 2022 with the invasion, what happened with food security and food prices, not just because of the wheat. And Russia is also a major exporter of grains, but also, fertilizers. And Russia being a really big producer of nitrogen fertilizers and oil, and oil and gas that's our inputs into other fertilizing products like phosphate, for example. But yeah, no, it is an interesting idea, right? I mean, Ukraine could have probably been, an extremely successful country had it, probably avoided, some of these post Cold War, unfortunate realities.
They could have definitely avoided a lot of things. They were just thought they too much fantasized EU. They too much fantasized NATO. I think they could have had a strong military army. They could have had a relationship with NATO. They could have had, defense alliance, or like what do you call training. There are always countries they share, their troops come here, like they go there and they can train. A lot of things, they can go to Germany. They can do all those things and also be a neutral country. It's just that people don't understand Europe is failing so badly right now. And I don't know why Ukraine wants to be part of this EU. And I think Ukraine has more potential. And it, as a country and people, I have seen some Ukrainians as really smart and really having this, if they have this patriotic more, and if they wanted to rule and be an independent country between the West and the East, or between West and Russia, they could have achieved it. It's just the problem was even the West always poked it. When the first 3 weeks, when they had a deal in Turkey, Boris Johnson went and said, "Don't sign it." What an idiot! How many people have died so far? How many lands have been they're going to lose? If they would have taken that deal that Ukraine had, Russia, and if you go back and see 3 weeks into this war, Ukraine had a deal that Russia agreed upon, brokered by Turkey and America. Not America, brokered by Turkey in Turkey, right? They were forced to get out by Boris Johnson, former UK Prime Minister, and saying that, oh, we will fight till the end. Look, the deal now that they're going to get now is going to be much worse than what they're going to get, what they would have got before. And the only thing that he asked was a couple of regions, and it would have been gone and done and dusted. And now they are losing more land, and now eventually, if you look at it, eventually Russia is winning, you know, because they're going to achieve what they wanted to achieve, and they're going to get more land. If they were smart enough 3 years ago and say, you know what, sign this deal, it was a perfect deal, and Boris Johnson said don't sign it, and he flew in there, and then Biden said don't sign it. Stupid. And
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, do you say that Russia is winning, right? So
it is
personally, I don't
winning.
really see anyone as winning in this case. I mean, it's hard
No,
to look
Russia
at
is
what was gained, right, versus what was lost and say anybody in this situation won.
right now. Ukraine lost a lot of things theoretically, right? They lost land. They are not getting NATO membership. They're gonna come up with these stupid security guarantees for Ukraine. I know how the West makes these things up, and then they have to all, what do you call it? They have to pay for their weapons. So now Trump said, President Trump said we are not going to pay a single penny. It's a loan. So EU buys the weapons from us, and they give it to Ukraine. So we are not going giving any money anymore. It's just, and then Putin came in and he acknowledged that, if you have you heard him talk, during the what do you call it? When he came in Alaska, he said if President Trump was the president back then, the war would have never happened. And it was Biden's mistake. Biden was a disaster. So that was a bigger problem. And I think people have to understand that EU is not the fantasy land anymore. Badly collapsed. And I think Ukraine should have, I applaud how Zelensky and everybody, their bravery, they stood up, they fought till the end, they're still fighting. And that's a great achievement. I think this momentum, they should become more independent and become a strong army, build a lot of weapons. They already have a minerals deal signed with US, build economy, build a relationship, rebuild the country. Do not go and join any of the alliances or anything. Be a partner. Be what do you call? Be a partner in it. Just no. It says the recording was not going through. Hopefully, it's going through. So,
It
anyways,
seems to be recording.
yeah, it seems to be a good. So, anyways, so that's what I'm telling people. The fundamental is that Ukraine never had any problems till 2014. Big problems of capturing land and everything. They could have, simply said, you know what, Russia, be a partner with Russia. Russia always wanted to make a partnership. They always want. So right now, people think that Russia is suffering. They are not. So many sanctions. People in Russia are happy. If you look at Tucker Carlson went to a supermarket in Russia, everything is happy. Prices are not going up. People are, because it's the largest country in the world. Plus, Russia could survive hundreds of years without any country's help because they have also largest
Yeah,
resources.
I mean it's largely self-sufficient and they haven't been super impacted by the economic sanctions, but I don't want to minimize the human impact of the war. I mean, there have been hundreds of thousands of Russian casualties.
Of
So
course,
there's
both
obviously
sides.
been yeah, on both sides there's been immense human suffering. So
Yeah.
it's not even talking about the economic side, but there's certainly been impact on Russia, very negative. But I also kind of want to touch upon this idea of appeasement. So in 2014, right, the Russians annexed Crimea, right, and then there was the conflict began in the west, sorry, in the east of Ukraine, right, the Russian-backed separatist movement. And then there were sanctions, yes, and there were diplomatic consequences, but there ultimately were not like hard consequences against Russia. And then people have started to point like to the case of appeasing Hitler, right? It's the classic case people always go back to, saying Hitler invaded, what was it, Czechoslovakia, and
Yeah.
then there was no real consequence for him. So now people are drawing parallels between the situation in Ukraine and this kind of emboldened Putin, right? So he saw 8 years later, right? Nothing really happened to us, so we can do this again. And maybe that was part of the timing with the Biden administration being, well, I'm not entirely sure why they chose that time. I'm not knowledgeable enough to speak on that. It is an interesting choice of timing.
You're
I think it was a
asking why did
deliberate.
they go back during Biden's time? Because, well, A, President Trump was the president for 4 years, so nothing happened, right? He had a good relationship with Russia. Russia knew that he could not invade Ukraine, and Russia knew the famous thing that Trump said, if I have a red button that works, so for Putin, he says I have a bigger one that works, it will, blow up the whole thing. So he made a lot of strategic moves. Even when Russia was threatening a lot of things, they moved all their nuclear subs close to Russia, and Trump played this big card. And when even again, beginning of the podcast, I was telling that when they came back to when Putin was here, he flew the B2 that bombed Iran and took the nuclear side just to show him that hey, we are the superpower, we are the strong, don't mess up with us or with our allies. So that's the power. You need to show the power if you want to be the hegemon of the world.
That reminds me
And
of sorry, go on, Saffron.
and then also when you asked me, well, what happened to us when we invaded Iraq, when we invaded Afghanistan, we never had any consequences. So how can we can be the justify the whole world went to
It,
Iraq
it's
and
not
Iran?
a matter of pointing fingers, right? Because you can argue we should have had consequences, right?
We
Because now
never
we
had
keep repeating
consequences.
the same mistake. We do it over and over, and now we have
Oh
this
yeah,
whole
that's whole.
catastrophe in Gaza, and we're never held accountable, and that's not
Nobody's
good.
going to get accountable because the military industrial complex rule the world. They rule the whole system. They are the guys that decide what's going to happen next. And we can't be like, oh, what was the consequences to all the countries, 42 countries that went to war against Iraq, and what was the consequences of people went to Afghanistan? So you can.
Well, that's how a lot of Western institutions lose their credibility,
Oh,
right? I
they
mean,
yeah, of course they
so
lose their credibility at all. My biggest fear right now is that Russia should be on our side. If Russia gets together with China, we are doomed. I think we spoke
well,
about
we're
this.
already seeing there's been a
Yeah,
closer partnership.
Russia should be our ally. Remember, First World War, Second World War, they fought for us. They fought for us. They were the strongest allies. So let's not forget that.
Right, but that was a matter of necessity at the time, right?
Still,
I
but
mean, we were not natural
they could have
allies.
also partnered with the other team, but they never did because they wanted
Oh,
to.
we also partnered with China too.
Yeah, they did, but they always. That's what this new Russia under Putin was like. They wanted to be the West. They wanted to be, they wanted to be part of what do you call it? The Western grouping. And in 2008, there was a famous memo that came out and said, "Niet," and he said, "Do not invade Ukraine." That was the red line. Do not let in Ukraine into NATO. That was the red line. He was like, "Oh, if a leader comes and tells you, right, don't invade Ukraine. Oh, sorry, don't let Ukraine be part of NATO repeatedly." And then we just kept pushing him, pushing him, pushing him. And then that's the consequences in the end, what we all get. So people don't understand that. Why is this happening? And people are like, oh, I mean, I think Ukrainians are the innocent people right now here, and they've been used by the West to just, as the proxy war. People don't understand this. They've been used
Certainly, yeah.
the war. And if I was an Ukrainian or the president, I'd be like, listen up, guys. When the war ends, we're gonna deal with both countries. We don't want EU membership. We make a country a great country. Bring back all those people. Bring back all the people that left. Rebuild the country. Build a strong military army. Like, if I go back and say, how did Sri Lanka defeated the civil war? We had at that time of the period, and during that period of the time in war in Sri Lanka, they had the second or third largest army in the world. They were militarily powerful. So you gotta be build it up, right?
Right. And but I also want to go back to this idea of appeasement. So, I mean, regardless of whatever Putin said, right? He can say red line this, red line that. It was completely illegal to invade Ukraine, full-scale invasion. That was, I mean, you can say whatever you want to say, but you can't invade a sovereign country like that.
No, that's
So,
right. No, I'm not justifying it, but it's
yeah,
completely he doesn't have any authority to go and
yeah,
invade. Well, man, how did we
sure.
invade Iraq? Then
No,
again,
but again, that
Afghanistan.
doesn't justify. I mean, our actions are not correct doesn't mean others' actions are,
So
just
that's
because we got
no.
away
In,
with it
in
doesn't mean
my
others should.
in my argument, that could be their argument, right? They could be like, "Oh,
Sure,
you
I mean,
guys,"
they're always quick to point to the hypocrisy, and they're right to do so. I mean,
and it's a
certainly,
bad hypocrisy. I mean, it was a valid
yeah, it's a
thing that
valid.
we
It's a.
did. We killed
I
one
mean,
million people
unfortunately,
in
it's
Iraq.
valid.
Who is going to go to jail? No one. You know.
Yeah, I mean, but let's just say, right, going forward, the Ukrainians have to make concessions, right, to Russia to end the conflict. Do you think, like, if they concede, right, the Russian, this might just be a repeat of 2014, right? What stops the Russians from then 5 years later just taking more? Or do you think there will be actual, because this was alluded to, right, in the meeting with Zelensky and Trump, was American security guarantees, right? So, like, what do you think, there actually will be security guarantees that will prevent further Russian encroachment? Or
Yeah, I think so. Because first of all, you have to understand the reason why President Trump made that minerals deal was they're going to have American companies in Ukraine. So so the America will never let American companies go bankrupt or get in disaster, right? We're going to be heavily involved in minerals transaction. So that's like it will be a national interest for us, right? When we have a national interest, we will anyways protect them at any cost, right? By default, you get that. Secondly, is that you need to understand that there is this nice interview with with Clinton and Piers Morgan in CNN. If you look at that video, he asked, Putin is someone like you can trust him because if he gives a word, it's really hard, right? If he's a leader, he's an alpha leader. That means he's another Trump, right? If he gives a word, he will keep it up as long as you don't destroy him publicly. You don't humiliate him when he's here in the press or anything. You, as the president, don't humiliate him in front of media. He's going to be okay. And that's why, if you look at Trump and Putin, the relationship is really nice. He doesn't humiliate him in front of the media, he doesn't talk bad about him. He just shows about his power. He shows, hey, we can do this. So you don't like say, oh, look at the tone of this talking with Biden and Trump. When Biden was the president, he was trashing Putin, blah, 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 blah. Trump,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
like, no, no, no. Even Obama. Trump, no. He's like, oh, we got this, we got this, we got this, we got this, and we got the B2s. We can mess you up. So he is indirectly telling you, hey, don't mess with me. If you mess with me, I'm going to come full on, and that will be the end of your
Well, he did
existence.
warn, right, of consequences if the war wasn't ended, right, in his meeting with Putin. But he seems to have backtracked a bit on that, no?
Well, Trump, no, but that's how you play the politics. That's how you play the media. You give them the dose, and they go up, and then the media backs down. Trump knows how to play these cards, and that's how a United States president should be. You
Yep.
know, to be able to control and also be able to be letting the other group know that we are not your enemies, but we can become your enemies if you mess with us. That's the
I don't
power
I
of.
don't deny that Trump has a savviness when it comes to understanding the media and understanding even some elements of deal making. I'm not going to say he's completely ignorant of that, but I think as much as he is savvy, he also half the time has no idea what he's doing.
Oh no,
But
he has all that. He doesn't have, he has idea. Oh, he's very sharp at doing ideas. This guy, President Trump, like you can whatever say, he has gone through a lot in life, and especially being a real estate deal like a person in New York City, it's really hard if you go back and read all how people, if you're in real estate business, and he knows what he's doing. He knows how to get things done. He would let people loose and just right grab him up when they don't expect him to.
well, the conservatives in the United States at the moment certainly seem to know how to get things done, and the problem there is as well. This also goes back to appeasement, right? Nobody is stopping them. They're just taking and doing. They're moving forward with action fast, and
Who?
nobody is stopping them. The conservatives in the United
Yeah, they
States.
did the same thing with the Democrats. Did the same thing. Liberals did the same shit for like with Obama, like hope and what happened. Like, oh yeah, the hope and freedom and everything. It
There
was
were a lot of issues under Obama's
it
administration,
was the
but
worst
they were not
administration ever.
so aimed at fundamentally changing the American system and even American values.
They changed fundamentally everything, but talking nicely. So Obama could
No,
tell you a
there was
lie.
definitely a
Yeah, Obama could
concealment of
say you a
intention.
lie. Obama, they gave Obama peace Nobel Peace Prize just to going around and talking nice. I mean,
No, that was ridiculous.
that's
Yeah,
ridiculous. And then he went and
it was
attacked
ridiculous.
Syria, Libya, Tunisia,
Oh yeah, he did a
Egypt.
lot of illegal wars for
He did a
sure.
lot of illegal. And then in America, what did he do? He messed it up. He came in and he closed all the, what do you call it? The therapy centers. Like they had the mental therapy. What do you call? There's a nice term. He closed everything, and now people are on the street. Dude, go to Los Angeles downtown. It's like a zombie place. Like you will
It's
walk, like
bad.
you
Yeah,
people are like dead, like this, and you can see. I'm not joking.
The
If
Walking Dead in real
yeah,
life.
like Walking Dead type of a scenario, and it's just so bad. Like people are sleeping on the street, homeless
Mm.
people, drug addicts, meth addicts. Nobody wants to do anything. If you come and walk down the street, you can see it looks like a third world country. It doesn't look like America. Like,
Well, that's also one thing that Putin has tried to challenge over, I don't know since when, but for some time now, is this idea of American exceptionalism, saying like, "Hey, look at you. You're not all that exceptional anymore." And I always thought, again, I don't think Putin is there's some hypocrisy there. He's maybe not the right one to point the finger, but he's not wrong in some sense.
of course, he's not. I mean, we all know who's not. Nobody's wrong here. It's just that it's gonna be like, how can you point the finger at others, not pointing at you back when you point at them?
But I also, this might be a bit of a sidetrack, but I like the thing you said about showcasing the B2s or whatever. That reminds me of also something the Russians did. I forgot the year, but I think it was the 4th of July, so American national holiday.
Uh
They
huh.
flew a bomber squadron like all the way to California just to say hello. So they had like jets and
Oh
bombers. I
yeah.
don't remember the exact composition. And the Russian pilots, they get on the communication with the American pilots. They say Happy 4th of July and they turn back and go back to Russia. So kind of a
Well,
similar thing, like showmanship. Like here's my guns, where's yours?
have you watched Godfather?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you watch the first one?
Only the first one.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, I can talk. So, if you see the first one, there was this five gangs, right? They all were ruling simultaneously. They all knew where they stood, right? So they all had their dirty works going around, but they never conflicted. They never fought each other until a lunatic came in and everything messed up and they had to take over everything. Until then, it was smooth. So when you have too many alpha countries, United States, US, China, India, you have to balance the power. You can't, you have to let them, you have to give and take. You have to say, you know what? Okay, I'm giving you this, you're giving me this. So Trump didn't like, like when with Iran, right? Trump said, Trump knew Iran is emerging power, right? What happened when they killed Soleimani? They informed Trump, said we're gonna attack a base. He said, "Oh, okay." He just ignored it. Nobody died, you know. So that's the playbook. You have to understand the playbook of global politics, and it's where you can refer to, what do you call, what's his name, in Wall Street, Streets Wolf of Wall Street. This guy goes, and when Matthew McConaughey and DiCaprio have a conversation, he says, "You know what's the meaning of fugazi? You don't know what's happening, but it's in the blue." And he explains it
Yeah, yeah.
so that's how politics is. That's how global politics work. You can't be like, "Oh, they flew in, we're gonna attack them." That's how you got to give and take if you want peace in the world. The problem is when you don't want to give or take, that's where conflict starts in
Yeah, no,
big
that's a great
reason.
point.
And if Ukraine would have given up NATO membership, not joining EU, they could have had a lot of land in their hand,
Yeah. Well,
right?
I mean,
And
it's
not
easy to say that, give and take, but if you're the one giving, it's a bit harder to actually do.
yeah, but you also
And you
understand.
said certain like alpha dogs, right? Like Putin and Trump, they're not the kind to want to give.
Yeah, but they also know how to balance their power public. They know how to, like, they two alphas know. Okay, so I when I see another alpha, I would know, okay, that's his moment, I'm gonna step back. This is his moment, I'm gonna step back. Like when Putin saw the B2, he just stepped back, right? He know Trump was doing this, but he didn't talk anything. He just
So,
went. And then when
yeah.
Trump goes to Moscow, he might show something to him. But Trump will be like, "Oh, okay, I get it." That's how you work. That's the signal.
Trump would probably say, "Oh, those planes are tremendous, amazing.
Yeah, he will be like, "Amazing, it's beautiful."
The Russians, they have these tremendous planes. They fly over and they're amazing. They're very loud." Something
They're
like
very
that.
loud. And so I I get, that's how the world should be. The problem is, I think the biggest problem was Ukrainians getting involved to getting in a coup with the United States, a democratically elected president in 2014. That was the biggest in the recent history, if I look at it.
Well, right. I mean, that's another question, right? Is has Ukraine ever really been a true democracy? I mean, if you look at certain indicators, for example, the corruption perceptions index,
Oh, that's
they've always been pretty not
yeah,
doing
yeah.
not doing
So
great.
it's that's what I'm saying. So the people I met when I said like they were all rich people in Poland. So the rich who got the money, there is no accountability for all the money that we have given. Some of them were cash. What has happened to the cash? How money has been going through. Where is the accountability? That's why the Trump administration got really, we gave so much money, but most of them came back to America because they bought the weapons. But when the money that they've been giving, I don't know what happened to it. So people need to understand that Ukraine is also not a perfect country. There's so much corruption. They haven't had an election now. President Zelensky was like, "Oh, because during a war he can't have elections," and there's a lot of oppositions
Fair
for him.
point, though.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Like now he's gonna lose when if he asks the election. Then there's a lot of criminal what do you call bribery charges in Ukraine. So like what do you call it? Corruptions. So
Yeah.
you can't also pretend to be a saint and say you are noble cause and noble act. And anyways, it doesn't
No,
justify
but
Russia's.
the Ukrainian people themselves, I mean, they're certainly in the right to defend. I mean, as you said, there's been a heroic effort. I mean, and they're ultimately the victims here.
I know they are ultimately the victims. Only the upper class are benefiting out of it. Whoever is part of the government or whoever is part of the deal of making weapons or whatever it is, they are all getting richer and richer. The dollars, the tax monies that we paid went to them. And in terms of Ukrainians, I think they have to stand up, elect a leader that's neutral, be a Switzerland of Eastern Europe. That's what I always say. Be a Switzerland. Why Switzerland is very successful? Because they're neutral. They don't go to
Well,
any shit.
they're neutral and they got banks and
The banks, yeah, you got the wheat. What do you need? Uh, uh, hey, wheat is money. It's not cheap shit. Like it's
weed.
wheat. I'm
Oh,
talking about the
wheat.
wheat. Yeah,
Sorry,
the
this is
wheat is
weed.
money. No, it's not wheat. Come on. I'm talking about wheat is money. When you want to feed 30% of the world population, you control a lot of things. You have to understand that's the fundamental food for.
Yeah, I mean, famously, people point to a rise in food prices. I think it was connected with some kind of climate issue in Russia in 2010, was it, right? The Arab Spring. So they can make a connection between the food prices from
Yeah.
Eastern Europe, grain supply, and the Arab Spring, political instability, because food prices, obviously, I mean, when you're hungry, that's a major destabilizer.
And the funny part, midst of everything, Germany was buying energy from Russia. Like, where was
Well,
their
I think at the
hypocrisy?
beginning, everyone was like, holy, SHIT, WTF,
Yeah.
Russia supplies all of us, all of the,
Yeah, they were never
holy crap.
independent.
But that benefited the USA, right? I think we ended up selling more like LNG to Europe or, to be honest, I'm not really an expert on this, but
Yeah.
um but also
So,
curious, Stefan. So sorry, not to digress again, but speaking of food prices in Sri Lanka, how did that happen, right? With I think recently there was a major challenge with,
oh,
fertilizer. They made this shift to go organic, right? Like
yeah, a
purely
stupid
organic.
dumb idiot president became, and he started thinking that organic, if you study organic farming, it takes 5 to 10 years for the land to be changing into normal to fertilizer based to organic farming. So all of a sudden he said, you know what, let's go organic, and it was a full disaster. That's it, and then everything went up.
Right.
It's all
So no
connected.
transition.
No transition, no just transition. There is no, slow move. Like maybe you do half and half. Nothing. They all went full on, and they come weak. They went full on down. People were on the street trying to make ends meet. They didn't have anything. So that's how disaster it is.
Yeah. That goes Well, again, that goes to show, the importance of food, the centrality of food.
Yeah, food is really important. Food is the central part of human beings, and in the West, and in any part of the world, you can't go without eating. So I strongly feel that Russia, Ukraine, I'm not justifying anything. Russia never had they illegally invaded a country. They should be accountable. I don't think it's going to happen, but they should be. And also in terms of Ukraine, they should be sovereign country. They should never join NATO. They should never join EU. They should be an independent, strong country with a strong military force that has partnership with NATO and other alliances, and be a strong country in Eastern Europe, and also be a partner with Russia, do business with Russia, get along with them. Then you will never lose people. People are dying. Like President Trump always says, like 5,000, 6,000 a week. Both sides, people are dying. Like innocent lives. Why can't these people just for a second think about it and say, you know what? Let's pump our brakes and stop people dying. Like this is just
Well,
really bad.
Putin, for example, he's too deep into it, right?
Yeah, he is politically connected. He is deep into this. Even he can't
I
lose.
mean, he can't lose face.
He can't lose face in his audience as well. So he's going to go full on. Well, go for another year and a half. Like kill more. Die. A lot of people are dying. America is not going to send.
Yeah, and nobody wants to see that because I mean, it could be 3 years from now. This could still be going on. I mean,
Russia could go
you're
forever because they are independent. I mean, whatever the sanctions that they do, no, it's not working. That's pretty clear.
no. I mean, as long as the West keeps supplying arms to Ukraine, I mean, they've shown incredible resolve and incredible
Resilient,
capability.
yeah,
I mean, so this can go on
forever.
for the foreseeable. Yeah, I mean, and nobody wants that. That's
Nobody
but
wants
it.
that. And then also Russia, everything has to end. And I think President Trump is the only president can make this happen. I think they
Yeah,
had a
but
good meeting. It showed a good sign on
right.
Monday. They all flew in. All the world leaders came in. Like, if you saw the famous
Yeah,
picture, they took it on the table on the Oval Office. And now they all are waiting. And I think they will have security guarantees. They will have the security guarantees
right.
because American companies are going to be in Ukraine. People don't understand this whole dynamics, how it works, right? If imagine if we have like 600 to 500 billion dollar of transaction every year, are we going to just let those that country be on a war?
No, I mean, particularly if it's concerning critical minerals,
Oh, so
which is obviously of national security interest.
it's
But
part of our national security interest, and
but
we will
ultimately,
protect
who
them.
the Ukrainians they lose in that case too, because then they lose sovereignty over their minerals. Then it's not great for them
It's
in
not great
either
at all.
scenario.
I think they should be an independent country. They should stop this fantasizing about joining EU and NATO. They should just be a Switzerland. I always keep telling this. Ukraine has to be the next Switzerland of Eastern Europe. Then they will have succeeded a lot of things. And they should never partner with NATO. They should have their own military force that's stronger.
Yeah, but as Trump said in that meeting with Zelensky, one of the few times I actually agree with something coming out of his mouth is that this one's a tough one to solve.
He
It's
thought
a
it would
tough
be
one.
easy because if you look at the big fallout when Zelensky came in first time, there was a big argument and fight and everything. The next time he came in, he knew what was the playbook. He got dressed up, put a blazer, put a suit on. He came in, meeting was fun. They had a good jokes. They were cracking up,
Yeah,
and
that's funny. I mean, you talked about respect, right? So they show Putin respect, but they don't show Zelensky any respect in the last two meetings.
we never gave money to Putin.
Well, that's true. That's
Yeah,
also true. Yeah.
taxpayers' money. That's you and my taxpayer and your money went to
Yeah, but if you say like this is a proxy war, right? Do we need them to say thank you for the war that we kind of helped
well,
initiate?
Biden tried to create it, not President Trump. So let's make that
Mm,
clear. The liberals wanted this shenanigans going on forever. They wanted to go for war. They wanted to do all these things. They wanted to make
yep.
sure Russia is. They wanted to weaken Russia with this, but Russia is not weakened. They become more stronger. You know. And if
And
anyone is
speaking,
wondering, audience, what when I'm talking, go and look Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin. The first part of the interview, he goes into the grocery stores and he looks at everybody's happy. Like prices are good. Like Moscow is clean. Like
but could that have been a
no,
staged visit?
I have met a lot of Russians too. I have met a
Yeah, I
lot
mean,
of.
sure. I mean, I know Russians, and they tell me things are great in Moscow,
Oh
St.
yeah,
Petersburg.
it's
Very
not
modern. It's fine.
not it's fine. It's modern. They can it's not it's
But I mean,
as a
it's also very self-sufficient. So things have changed, of course. But I was in Russia and Moscow in 2016, I
Have you
remember the
been there?
grocery stores didn't have a lot of produce.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't a lot of fresh produce, and I asked a Russian friend because I went to Mongolia right after that, and even in the middle of nowhere in Mongolia, they had like, clementines or oranges or something at the store, which I didn't find in some of the supermarkets in Russia. So I asked a friend about it, and he's like, "Oh, well, we don't produce it, so we don't need it. We wait until we have that in summertime or something."
Be
And
nice.
this
I
just
mean,
goes to show how
because
self-sufficient,
self-sufficient they
their
are, and
mentality
they
is.
all they need is some vodka.
Yeah, they had that, plenty of that, no doubt.
They drink vodka. That's all they need. Russians need vodka. If you pour some vodka to me, I'm okay with it.
You have problem, no problem. Drink vodka.
No problem. Everything you can drink some vodka. Everything will be fine.
All right, this
But
is low blows on the
it's
Russians now,
yeah,
but
no, it's they're very nice people, and people we shouldn't be hating Russians. Great people and Ukrainian as well. It's just government and politics been going back and forth, and as I strongly said, Russia should be part of West. The moment we keep losing it, we will lose so badly if they get fully entangled with China, and that's
yeah,
a
and that's always.
disaster.
And I also worry that the Chinese are, in regards to the situation between China and the island of Taiwan. I worry that the Chinese are monitoring the situation between Russia and Ukraine very closely in terms of whether or not they would invade as well the island of Taiwan
Yeah,
and how
they're
that
not.
would potentially
As
play
long
out.
as we have a strong United States, they will never invade it. Plus, all the factories are moving out, so they will never invade it. Trust me.
Yeah,
United States has to be. This is the problem we have. Either we have a president that's going full on war, or we have a president who doesn't do anything, like who doesn't care, who just trashes other country leaders. Trump, it's the best. We need Trump-like figure that can be and say, no more wars, no more trashing other countries. We're going to make deals and build this
yeah.
country and
I
build the
mean, I think
economy.
we need that, but not, in my opinion, a Trump-like figure, because that's what he is. He's a figure, right?
Trump doesn't have filter, which is nice. I like it. He doesn't have filter. He just thinks whatever he thinks, whatever he.
Right.
The only
But
thing you need
because
to
at the end,
understand though, Trump
mm,
can't be bought.
oh yeah, he can.
No, he can't. He can fuck you up too. You give him millions of dollars when people who have donated to him. I give him credit. You can say you can't control him just because you gave him money. Maybe at some point, he'll be like, "Oh, you already gave me the money. Why should I be listening to you?" He's that kind of a
Do you
person.
think he can be blackmailed?
No, oh, you can't. You can't blackmail him. 100%. You can't blackmail him. If not, they would have blackmailed the shit out of him with Epstein's file. They never did.
Wasn't that what they said the Russians did?
The Russian did blackmail? No, I don't think so. This guy has lost everything in life. Right? He's 80 years old. What is there for him to lose? Has 5 bankruptcy, right? So he has gone through everything in life, and they're gonna blackmail
Yeah.
him. No, he has a strong. He doesn't care because he knows what he's doing, and I think it's gonna work. The only problem I see, whoever becomes the president in 2028, that will define the course of this country.
Well, that's an important question, right? Because I do not think Trump or the conservatives have a respect for term limits at all.
No, they talk about it. That's their political talking points. They will never in million
So
years.
January 6th was a talking point.
But January 6th, if you go back and see what happened, well, why didn't Nancy Pelosi get the National Guard? Why didn't there's so much of what happened to the committee? Why all these things are coming up? Like, was it staged by Democrats? Well, Trump, yes, he was aggressive in talking, but was the whole part staged by Democrats? What happened to Russia hoax? You look, a sitting president ordered dirt on a candidate. That's very clear that when you look at the memo that DNC, what do you call it, DNC, Tulsi Gabbard, the DNC, DNI, the Defense Intelligence Director, that's tells Tulsi Gabbard, she released a memo that has Obama asking them to create a hoax. Russia, Russia, Russia. So they went full on. Everything is coming to
But there
limelight.
was no hoax regarding the Russian meddling in the election. I mean, that was not a hoax.
No, that's what they made it. That's what they made up. They said the
No, I
whole.
mean, of course, the Russians would have. I mean, everyone does it,
Yeah,
anyways.
but
I mean,
they wanted. They never did it, and they wanted to create it, and they asked. There's letters sent by Obama. You can see it publicly that
right?
he insisted, and go and find dirt on connect something.
I'm
So
not. I'm not personally aware of this, but I'll definitely look it up.
look into it.
But I think we're reaching about the hour mark. Just wondering if maybe I could share something before we wrap it up.
Yeah, but anyways, guys, thanks for listening to us, and it has been a very intense conversation. Hope you guys liked it. Give a thumbs up, like us, subscribe, and what have you got, Chris? What's your technology of the day? Innovation? Is the world at least
Okay.
moving part of innovation? Because I don't know if I shared you last the song "God's Country" by YouTube. That's a song where it tells about why there is no innovation anymore. We need more innovation.
Yeah. Well, there's literally thousands of different innovations going on. As we speak, all the time, everywhere.
Uh-huh.
I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but we
I
talked about
was
seaweed
about to go
before,
say,
right?
I was about to say, come on, Chris, give us something that, that's
I
different.
I swear I did not
You like
intentionally
seaweed?
go out and look for the
Oh, I
database
see
of
who,
seaweed
I know
innovations.
who is your influence. I'm not going to name that person. I know your influence, who I have been
I'm an
influenced
independent
to.
person, Saffron.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh,
So
yeah.
actually, the origin of this was I was at a conference in Singapore, right? And someone was asking a question about medical waste. So people
Okay.
talk about waste, right? We always talk about like plastic bottles and trash and stuff. We don't talk a lot about medical waste and things like e-waste. So like medical waste, it's like a huge source of waste. I mean, it's all this single-use stuff that can't be, recycled and, biohazards and stuff. It produces a ton of waste, the medical system. And one of those is like syringes, right? So when you go and get a shot,
Hmm.
that's just thrown out right after, right? And the world goes through about 16 billion syringes a year, which
Wow.
is like huge. Yeah,
Okay.
16 billion. And sometimes you even see the news headlines, right? Like some of these like wash up on shore and like mass, like a sea of syringes just like wash up on shore because it wasn't disposed of properly. So then I was wondering, like, okay, so are people producing like, medical equipment like syringes that can be recycled or degrade or something? And then I found this thing on MIT website. I think it's being advanced by some people in Indonesia. I have no idea about the viability of this innovation, or it was just an interesting idea. So again, like they're using
So what do
seaweed.
they make? They make syringes and biodegradable syringes and capsules.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, single use item, but then once it's disposed of, it'll degrade naturally because it's made of, from seaweed products, biodegradable syringe. So I thought that was really cool. Again, I don't know about the effectiveness of this, but it was a really interesting idea. And
All
yeah,
right,
seaweed
nice.
seems to be super cool, actually.
I like seaweed. I have eaten it. The only thing I can say, but I did get fed up of it. But yeah, that's right. All right. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. And I hope we guys did justice for an hour. And Chris, hopefully we can get some good topics. And we also have exciting news coming up that we might be bringing in more guests in the future. So, right, Chris?
Yeah,
Are we heading in that
the more the merrier.
direction? What?
The more the merrier, as they say.
The more the merrier. All right, guys. You guys take care, and you guys have a nice week ahead. And hope to see you next week in September. Well, ciao.
Thank you.